Hello. It is Noontime Nuggets, and I'm with Dream Big today. And we do this at noon Central Time, Monday through Friday. And we also share our highlights from the Bible study reading Sunday through Saturday at 8 a.m. Central Time. So I'm Cassie, and today I wanted to share something that God highlighted to me, and it is Proverbs. We start Proverbs 13 today. So Proverbs 1 says that a wise child accepts a parent's discipline. A mocker refuses to listen to correction. So clearly, I felt like God was talking to me. Not only is this so great for our kids, any of our littles, but it's also for me and you in your relationship with God. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because a lot of times we get discipline and punishment confused, or we don't know that there's a difference. And so I looked up the definition, and the definition of discipline is the practice of training another to obey rules or a code of behavior using consequences to correct disobedience. And discipline. So the punishment definition, this is interesting too, the infliction of a penalty as retribution for a defense. So what's the difference between discipline and punishment? Well, discipline is used to teach and guide us. It's also done out of love. And punishment is used as a purpose of controlling. Stop. Don't do it anymore. Where discipline will teach you why not to do it anymore, or what is a better way of behaving that way, okay? So I used to be a playground monitor, and I lived just a block away from the elementary school up here. My kids went to that school. And for about 3 years, I was the recess monitor. And I learned very quickly that I had more influence with the kids when I had a playful spirit and I played with them versus always having a firm word stopping them from doing what they were doing. This was done in games and sharing, don't cheat and things like that, and why we don't do that stuff, why we don't cheat, why we don't hit another, why we don't run up the slide when another's coming down, that kind of stuff. So they had to learn to trust our relationship because they couldn't really recognize my authority or understand what I was trying to do if I didn't have a relationship with them. And I think that's so much like us and God too. If we're not in the Word, knowing who He is, knowing His heart, we don't learn to trust His decisions, to trust His path for us, or to recognize His authority in certain decisions we need to make, or relationships that we have, or a continuation of sin we're having a hard time with. It's very important to recognize that He knows already what's in our heart and what we're trying to hide. We can't hide anything from Him. So He is always disciplining maybe our behaviors or our decisions. And that's okay to do, just like a parent with a child. So some of the questions we learn to recognize with our kids and with God for us would be, how can we discipline in a way that benefits a behavior, is helpful, is productive, and makes a difference? And all of these things are shown. God shows us in Proverbs 3. And He also shows us in Hebrews 12, 5 through 11. There's a lot of great guidelines right there that helps us understand how to gently discipline, why we do that. And whether we are a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a mentor, a monitor, even as a friend, we can do this in our relationships too. There's some times where we need to correct a friend's behavior, or I have some friends that use language I'm not very comfortable with, and I have asked out of love, please don't, out of love, please don't talk like that around me. And it's very understandable that it's staying friends, right? I'm not rebuking them, but I'm just asking them to be aware of the words they choose. So we've been in this house for almost 30 years, and the neighborhood has grown up. And when we first were here, there was a little girl. She was probably about 8 years old. Her name was Jessica. And her family was going through an awful divorce. And she had 2 older brothers that were really bitter about the situation. And Jessica and I would have a time where we would sit on the front stoop and we would have a talk. And she would share how she's feeling, what she was scared about, ask questions. And it was such a great opportunity for me to be able to share God's love with her and reaffirm that this wasn't her fault and that she can see it. She has a choice to make in how she sees it. If she wants to be angry like her brothers, or if she just wants to be loving toward her mom and dad and her brothers, and try to learn how to grow a little bit through this. So what she used to do, though, is she would just walk in my front door. She wouldn't knock or anything. She just walked right in whenever she wanted to have a talk. And so I had to correct that, and I did it gently, of course. We sat out on the stoop, and I told her the benefit of ringing the doorbell and why we do it. And it was a behavior that needed to be corrected, because really you can't just walk into anyone's house. But there was nobody there at that time to teach her at her home. So I got an opportunity to share God's love with her in that. And without that relationship, I don't know what would have happened to Jessica, but Josh McDowell said, rules without relationship will lead to rebellion and also resentment. So if you have a child who, or if you're a household that doesn't have any guidelines or discipline, the child goes in the real world and they get corrected by their boss, and they probably will have rebellion, or they'll resent you later on for not ever putting guidelines on them. Guidelines are meant to keep us safe. They're meant to be an asset to community. They're meant to benefit our relationships. And this is what God wants from us too. So we need guidelines for for our character to be refined and done out of love, and that helps teach us why. So it's important for our relationships, especially with God. And if we see God as a punishment to us instead of Him guiding us, then our view of our relationship is going to totally change. We're not going to see God's love in that correction. We're just going to see what we can't do. And it doesn't help us grow. It makes us the fool. And that's what that verse is about. So when the kids were growing up, Paul and I did a lot of discipleship discipline, which means as a disciple, we're a follower of Jesus and you learn from him. And that visual was great for the kids, because as a parent's priority, with the kids being little growing up, you want them to depend on you as a parent or the grandparent, or to depend on your standard of behavior, your guidelines. And as they grow up, you want that dependence to change over to God, because you can't be a hovering parent the whole time. You have to teach them independence, and independence, you want them to depend on God. They're never solo, and the kids grew up knowing that. And anytime we had a time of correction, it was done out of love. And if it couldn't have been done with a calm spirit, if it was done in anger, that's punishment. So we worked very hard at just stepping back, asking them to go to their rooms. We'll see you in a little bit, and we'll talk about this. And we didn't do that all the time, but as they got older, we tried to do it more often, because that's what our job was. That's what all of our jobs are. With every younger generation and in any relationship, it is to always gear them toward the love of God and the reason why we basically just want to be God's light to every corner that we go to. So I hope this encouraged you. Please know it's never too late to accept his correction. It's just like it's not too late for your children, just like it's not too late for your friend. I like the analogy, the thought of a sandpaper and how maybe instead of, let's talk about in a marriage, if I married my husband with the way he was and I was praying for him to change, it would be better for me to ask God to change my heart. And I think that's a big part of this too, because as a parent, you think that a stern rules or correction will help them be better in life because the world is tough. But honestly, home is where they should trust first, just like their heart with God is what they should trust first. I hope that makes sense. So I hope it encourages you to dig into the Word and find out what God is highlighting to you, to encourage that relationship, to prompt you to read a little bit more and dig into something that you didn't hear before, or that you have a question about. God's there to show you, and he's there to be with you, and he never leaves you. It's us who turns away. So if you feel far away from God, then turn back to him, get into his word, and pray that God helps you see something. So thank you so much